Now, ladies and gentlemen, Jasmine Crockett still thinks that anything she doesn't like and doesn't understand is a consequence of racism is a great strategy. And well, when she brings this to Republican Representative Wesley Hunt, she gets utterly destroyed. You got to see this.
Yet when we look at things like the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the 9 worshipers who were murdered at the Mother Emanuel AME Church, the 23 people murdered in 2019 during the shooting at Walmart in El Paso, the 10 people murdered during the 2022 shooting at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, all of these were murdered by white supremacists who are empowered by the Republican Party's racist rhetoric and policies. This is the same party that wants to drag us back to the Jim Crow era. Some say that there aren't poll taxes, and I guess it's because they're not listing the amount of money. But when you tell somebody that they've got to go and pay for something, say, like a passport that costs over $100 in order to be able to vote, that looks like a poll tax to me.
So, again, no one is trying to bring the United States back into Jim Crow, especially with requiring IDs to vote. To say that separate water fountains and blacks and whites can't be playing cards together, they can't study together and go to school together under the same roof or in the same classrooms, and they can't even exchange textbooks between blacks and whites. To equate that to showing voter ID is to disenfranchise everyone who suffered under the Jim Crow laws. Jasmine Crockett, of course, is too young to have experienced that, so she can't really try to speak for these atrocities and try to equate them as such. But we just know from evidence that showing ID to vote, like, having to show ID for buying liquor and other things that you use ID for, that it's just a false equivalence and it's just offensive. So now these poll taxes were a fee imposed on people for voting, and it was an attempt to suppress the votes of black people back in the day. However, Jasmine Crockett is misleading people here with a term and equating it to having to have a passport to vote. You don't need to have a passport to vote. We all know that. So, what documents, right, actually qualify? Well, for most Americans, it requires a valid passport, as been said, but you can also get a birth certificate paired with a photo ID, a naturalization certificate, or a consular report of birth abroad. And so, if your names don't match, then you should have a document when you get your name changed, right? They'll give you a document and you should be able to keep that. You get a birth certificate when you're born. You get a photo ID for doing anything, just about, right? So these are all easy, common things. Probably one of the most common documents, a state issued driver license or ID. On average, it costs between $20 to $40. I mean, that's real simple. If you can't scrape together $20, I don't know how I don't know how you can be helped, really. But this is really low cost. Passports can be expensive and they take a while to get. They're like $150 plus, depending on what you get, and they can take months to process. But a photo ID, you get yours within a week. You get a temporary one while they print yours out. And so a birth certificate also costs between $10 and $35. You go to your local records office and you can do that. They can even mail it to you. And I think you can do it online. I have to look at the websites, but you can do just about anything online nowadays. I can renew my vehicle tabs and I have online. So I don't see how this could be much different. And so Jasmine Crockett thinks that requiring to have ID to vote is somehow Jim Crow 2.0 because it's keeping people from voting, especially the black minority people and women, right? Some of the arguments have been from the Democrat Party is that they can't afford it or they can't get access to it, right? They don't know where the DMV is, right? The Department of Licensing is, that kind of thing in their area. So not too long ago, black people were interviewed on the street and asked questions about IDs, and well, this was their answer.
We are told constantly that all rules with regard to identification when you vote are racist. That's actually what is said from the New York Times to CNN to your local teacher in your school. So you might have seen this, and if not, take a look. Ami Horowitz, who does these great man-on-the-street interviews, went in Manhattan, where he lives, and went specifically to Harlem which is a largely black area of Manhattan, and just stopped people in the street and asked them if they found it hard to get an ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know anybody, any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
Because that's the charge, that it is discriminatory against blacks because blacks apparently are really challenged when it comes to getting an ID.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
She just says that black people are too stupid to understand how to get online and type, find place for ID, where to get ID. These people are these fighters of racism, supposedly, these people who are most vocal against racism, tend to be the most racist, don't you think?
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Everybody that I know have ID. Like, that's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's at on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Would you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions, and I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work.
Whites somehow master this incredibly complex, labyrinthine project of getting an ID, but somehow non-whites just find it hard to navigate, so it's discriminatory. Anyway, every poll shows the majority of blacks believe in an ID for voting. Why wouldn't they? So it's the joke is, as always, it's the left that is racist. The implication that blacks find it difficult to get IDs is as racist as you can get. It's contemptuous. That's all it is.
Who are these people talking to?
Do you have a problem that if you go to vote and they say, "Can we please see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are"? Are you
Love showing my ID.
You got no problem with that?
Nope.
Would you have a problem if when you go to vote, if they say, "Can we please just see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are"? Do you have an issue with that?
No.
Would you have a problem if there was a rule where you have to show your ID in order to vote?
I don't think so. No.
It's just mind-blowing because the Democrat Party wants to keep black people and other minorities victims. So they'll shovel this garbage, and these white liberal people that we saw earlier in this video are just going to believe it, and then they're going to vote against things that help everyone, black people, minorities themselves, because they firmly believe that black people are just as stupid, and they don't realize most likely what they're thinking is racist. What they're being told is racist. They think it's the opposite, actually. Try to wrap your head around that. I mean, I'm just in constant disbelief with that video, and I had to go through the whole thing because you just have to see the whole experience of the interview and what reality is versus Democrat fantasy. But let's get back to Jasmine Crockett and the epic takedown that's going to take place, because people like Jasmine Crockett are the worst racists out there. And I think it was evident in that last video, but we just want to put some icing on this cake now, don't we?
Some of y'all y'all need to read up on your history books, the very same ones that the Republicans have decided that people should not hear about, because you don't want real history taught in our schools, because you're afraid that it's going to hurt people's feelings to know that their ancestors were so savage that they would enslave black folk. You don't want them to understand why the 14th Amendment mattered then and it matters today. You don't want them to understand that when they draw these racist lines and tell black folk that they shouldn't have representation in this country, that it is against the Constitution. You want them to be ignorant so that they can sit up here and be your token for your mission.
Expired. The talking point for the Democrat high brain today is that Jim Crow is alive and well in America, and I am sure that some of the SPLC's actions have helped them make this argument. My first question is for you, Ms. Swain. In the 2024 presidential election, were you required to pay a poll tax before you voted?
No.
I have another question for you. When you went to vote at the voting locations, were you intimidated in any way with baseball bats, fire hoses, or dogs?
The only thing that intimidated me is that in my state that you go into, if you have to ask for a Republican ballot or a Democrat ballot, and if you are in a precinct that's predominantly Democrat, I think you would have a lot of fear.
Thank you for answering that question, man. For my Democrat colleagues and everyone on the left screaming Jim Crow 2.0, like I hear ad infinitum, let's take a moment to revisit what actual Jim Crow was. Jim Crow was a time when black Americans could not sit in classrooms with white Americans. It was colored-only water fountains. It was beatings in the streets. It was lynchings. It was fear. It was public humiliation. My own father, who grew up in a segregated South in New Orleans, had to walk around to the back of a restaurant just to order a sandwich in the French quarters of New Orleans because of the color of his skin. That was Jim Crow. And that is precisely why it is so offensive to compare that era of legalized discrimination and racial terror to showing a photo ID in a voting booth. And it's just as offensive when groups and organizations like these manufacture faux hate and racial tension. But somehow showing an ID to vote in America is now considered to be Jim Crow 2.0. This is not about civil rights. This is about political theater.
It's also about scaring people into keeping the Democrats in the power. I just want to add that. We can keep going.
And the Democrat Party survives on manufacturing grievance. Democrats invoke the pain of the past because they have nothing to offer for the present. They don't want an honest debate. They want emotional manipulation. They want outrage. They want division, as evidenced by our discussion in this very hearing today. They want Americans to fight each other because chaos is politically useful to them. Words like racism and white supremacy and Jim Crow 2.0. For the purposes of elucidating my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, let's take a hard look at what real Jim Crow was. Check out this one behind me. You see, this is Jim Crow. This is what Democrats call Jim Crow. Next slide, please. See, that is Jim Crow. For whatever reason, this is what Democrats call Jim Crow. Slide, please. That is Jim Crow. This is what Democrats call Jim Crow.
So we're starting to get the picture, folks, both figuratively and, well, literally. The Democrats, as Mr. Hunt here is saying, manufacture fear and rely on emotional reactions to vote, not intellectual honesty, not people taking the time, like Mr. Wesley Hunt here has, to draw comparisons and to provide the facts, right? They want to distort history and use it to their advantage. But let's keep going because it just keeps getting better and better.
I know that some of these images can seem to be very jarring to many of us that haven't experienced that over the course of the past 40 years of my lifetime. I never saw these things. I never experienced them personally, but I have family members who have and who did. And that's why it is extraordinarily important for us to be very, very careful with what we compare to Jim Crow, because this country has come a very, very long way. I keep saying this over and over and over and over again till I am blue in the face. I represent a white majority district along with 3 of my other black colleagues here in Congress. And you know what? Nobody cares about what we look like. We are being judged not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character, because we've come a long way from this. I don't want to go back to that. In fact, I want to continue on the path that America has set forward in the name of Jesus Christ. And I want to let people know that we don't need to be angry. We don't need to be divided. We want equality for everyone. Let me be crystal clear. This is not 1960 anymore. It's 2026. And the fact that groups like these are willing to stroke the flames of hate by funding the KKK is absurd.
Yeah, we're in 2026 now, okay? Not 1960s, not the 1950s. The Democrats probably haven't looked at their calendars on their wall or on their desktop or computers, I don't know, for a good 50-some years. They should take a look and see what day it is, what year it is. It's real simple. For the Democrats, Republicans, anyone, provide value to people and they'll support you. Help them in their life and they'll help you stay in power. You can't con people into voting for you, try to promise them all this stuff, and then pull the carpet from underneath them when you get elected, like the Democrats love to do. And folks, I'll leave you with one more message of common sense from Mr. Wesley Hunt.
Jasmine Crockett said that voter ID was like a poll tax. What are your thoughts on that?
Voter ID is like a poll tax. So let me tell you something. I have a very big family, and my family is all black. And every single member of my family has what? A form of an ID that can allow you to vote in an election. I have a 3-year-old little boy. I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old daughter. You want to know what the first thing that they were given when they were born? A birth certificate and a social security number. So if you think that this is a poll tax, again, it's the dog whistling back to this Jim Crow 2.0 argument that I have already proven is null and void. It doesn't exist today. It's time to move on. The days of the poll tax and the days of Jim Crow are over.